Okay. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are talking about if case statements and how to make them readable. Okay, these are the Saburly core values in case you forgot. So for the if then else statements or if then statements, when you don't need else, you need to write the nominal path through the code first. Then the unusual cases. This enables the developer who reads the code to handle the most usual case there, and since exceptions happen or unusual cases happen more rarely, basically he will need them less and less. So if the usual case is buried down there, then it's not easy to find, and our goal is to make it easy for the developer who is reading to find stuff that he needs most of the time. Okay. So when you're dealing with numbers or like less than or greater than operator with any other type, you have to think about the equals case. It is often a case that people forget the equals case, and it's like an off by one error. Then when the actually equal is true, and you haven't thought about the case, then it's random or you have a bug or something. So like a good rule of thumb is to see if there's an equals sign, and then like you have to take care of it. So if you have a method that returns status, that can be an error or something else, then first handle the normal case, like the successful return value, and then handle the errors. That's in some like lower level programming languages like C, because you don't have exceptions, or in Go you don't have exceptions. I mean, you have kind of, but they are not the way to handle the errors. Then you should handle the normal case first, like the success return value first, and then go to the errors. So if sometimes you need sometimes when you have if, you don't need to do anything for the else case, but it's a good thing to just put it there and just put comment inside it, so that you signal the developer that comes after you that you thought about the else case, but you don't need to do anything. Some programming languages like Python, they have a pass statement that like just does nothing, but signals the same thing, like that you thought about this and that you deliberately wanted to do nothing. So it's always good to simplify the if expressions inside. You can look at this like input character equals this and this and this and this and this. So if you have a case where you need the complex conditions, then it's best to offload it to a method or function, or through a separate Boolean variable, and keep the code inside the brackets of if simple. So we'll see how. Okay, this is the same slide. Okay, this is how it's simplified. We just like moved these tests into separate function. So the one thing here is the first one is not that complicated, but you need to always maintain a same level of abstraction, same level of abstraction inside one method. So basically, if you replace the second case with a lot of variables, you should do that for the first case, just in order to keep it on the same level of abstraction, so that the developer that reads this code doesn't have to jump around and see that if you are dealing with the input character directly, and else it is calling a function and something like that. So it's always good to have a same level of abstraction on the whole method, not just in the if cases, but with the other statements as well. So this is how to improve readability by using variables. Basically, here this if statement at the end could have contained everything, all these expressions with absolute and less than and something like that. But just by naming it inside the variables, you are basically commenting on the business logic of these variables, and like you avoided using comments, and now it's clear what the business logic of this if expression is. If the developer needs to read into the condition, he can just go back one step and read. But this way, it is clear from the business logic perspective what's the condition about. So now we'll go to the case statements where you have a multiple choice. As with the if, the statements inside case need to be short. It is very hard to track what's happening when there's a lot of code between the cases. So besides, like in the if statements, we use the functions to shorten the condition, but with the case, we all know that basically conditions are I'm talking about like C style case statement. Conditions are equal to the labels that we put there. So we can use function to shorten the actual code that runs when the conditions are met. So also you should avoid case statement if it doesn't feel right to use it. So only when you can really classify the return value, you should use it. Sometimes if the conditions are different, or if you keep putting ifs inside the case statements or something like that, that's a maybe good code smell that maybe you don't need the case statement, but you can use if then else. It doesn't matter, like you are dealing with same variable. If it's not just simple classification, then you should use if then else instead of case. So again, with the order of things, you should also order these cases with putting the most common ones up front, or if it makes sense, with another like consistent logic, like alphabetically or something like that. But the order needs to be consistent throughout the code. And you should use default case in case there are errors like unsupported. You can use default case to handle this. Another use for default cases is if you have a really default value for anything else, use this. Then you should use the default case. Sometimes the developers they check common cases at the beginning, and then they are left with one case and just use default for that. Even if it isn't a bug, in your business code logic, this makes code less readable. So instead, you just omit default if you have to in this case, and just use all the cases so that you signal that this is really not a default value, but just avoid using default for the last case that you used, that you are like writing. Again, ternary operator is another way of doing the if and else. So you should use ternary operator only for simple cases, and there are two reasons for it. The readability, and another reason is like if you are debugging, you cannot put breakpoint into one of the cases when it's ternary operator. So because it's just one statement or one line, usually, or even if it's two lines, it's one expression. You cannot put a breakpoint if the condition is true or if it isn't. So it makes debugging harder. Also, no matter how smart you are, never nest or chain ternary operators. It is like hell to read for us normal people. So it's not readable, and it has this problem with with debugging. So okay, this like form is more readable again according to some people. I don't know, like if it's really simple, then you should not like put it in two lines, but like this can make some sense. Okay, so we are doing the code review. I asked you to volunteer, and of course nobody volunteered, so I will do the honor of reviewing this code. This is a snippet of code from vBulletin. I was like searching Google for badly written open source software. So, and this one of the comments is like this, so I decided to take a look at the code. I mean, this is not a really bad code, but it has some problems. First problem is these if statements could use some like explaining via the variables and something like that we talk about here. Also, probably the naming is not that bad, but for example, you have this VB types variable that's like probably global somewhere, and for a developer that's like coming, it's pretty generic, like VB, it stands for vBulletin, and then types. It can mean anything, like types are very present in programming, so like it doesn't give us any information about what are these types for. I'm sure the developer who works this knows that, but this is not readable, and the developers that come will have a hard time of thinking about. So the better name would be like allowed content types or something like that. So white list of content types or something like that. Also, the big problem with this is like catching the general case, general exception here. Basically, the idea was here to, if content type is not present in these like types, I guess, then you should just unset this variable. So, and do not need to modify anything else. But basically, any error that happens in this line, or you add another line there and there, it will be caught. And since the exception is general, it will catch any error, and you don't have any indication of what happened. So basically, if, for example, a process ran out of the memory at this line, then theoretically possible, it would throw some kind of out of memory exception, and this would catch it, and you would not get an error report, or would get something else. Or even I think So this is always bad idea. So always when you are catching exception, even if you really want to catch general exception, at least you can log it. So at least in your log file you have a indication that something has happened. It really saves a lot of time when you are debugging, because if something happened that you did not anticipate here, the code or the software would appear to work. There would be no error message, no log entry that says that something is wrong, but the things would be wrong. And these are one of the hardest bugs you can find. Okay, so any questions? Wow, great. So see you around then next time, whenever the time will be. Bye-bye.